Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we are revisiting the blue-white artifact archetype as suggested by my supporters on Patreon. Also gives us the opportunity to revisit the archetype before the upcoming expansion, which is sure to have some powerful artifacts that we can slot in, so we already have a powerful baseline to work with. And one of the cards I wanted to build around specifically is the Enigma Jewel, a 1-mana legendary artifact, enters tapped, but can then tap for double colorless that we can spend only to activate abilities. So it is a pretty narrow use case, but it is quite powerful in an artifact deck especially, where we have cards like Collector's Vault that we can play on turn 2, and then immediately activate to draw and discard and make a treasure token, so that can give us a huge mana advantage while improving our hand. Then now we also have Mazemind Tome reprinted in Foundations to either scry if we tap it, or we can draw a card if we pay 2 mana and tap it, eventually gaining 4 life. So these are some of the main cards we're trying to leverage with the Enigma Jewel. Then we have more activated abilities such as Thran Spider, which can look for artifacts in the top 4, but also just a 2/4 artifact creature with reach, making a Power Stone token that we can also use for our various artifact synergies. And then another important card in this archetype, of course, is Simulacrum Synthesizer, which is going to be the main win condition for the deck, letting us scry 2 when it enters, and then now whenever another artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters, we get to make a construct token that scales with the number of artifacts we control, which can very quickly get out of hand. Then I'm also playing the package of Urza, Lord Protector, alongside the Mightstone and Weakstone, so there's a small chance we'll get to craft Urza Planeswalker, although it's not the primary goal. Urza is still quite good as a 2/4, giving our artifacts a 1 mana discount, and then we can also pay for the ability using the Enigma Jewel, and then the Mightstone and Weakstone is still individually quite powerful here as a 5 mana artifact that can trigger Synthesizer, either drawing 2 when it enters or giving a creature -5/-5, and then it can also tap for double colorless. That's similar to a Power Stone, so we can use it for activated abilities as well as casting artifacts, so that's a little bit different from the Enigma Jewel. And then rounding out the deck, we need some removal. We've got the full set of Glass Casket to exile cheaper creatures, as well as 2 copies of Day of Judgment as a board wipe, since we're not making a ton of creatures until we get the Synthesizer going, so the board tends to be quite clear on our side to leverage Day of Judgment as often a one-sided board wipe. And then Braided Net is also pretty good at locking down opposing creatures, maybe make the opponent overextend into our sweeper, and if we craft it into the Kipu, we can also draw a ton of cards with it if we have lots of artifacts in play, while also maybe re-triggering Synthesizer, since that's another 3+ mana artifact entering the battlefield, so that also works out quite nicely. And then we've got the full set of Fabrication Foundry, which is just a mana accelerant, making white mana to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifact sources, so it's a little bit more narrow than just playing an Ironcrag, but that one is legendary, and the upside of Foundry is that it can also maybe get artifacts back out of the graveyard, so that can also come in handy. And then occasionally we can also craft the Enigma Jewel into a Locus of Enlightenment, since we have so many artifacts with activated abilities that we can craft alongside it. And then the Locus of Enlightenment will double our activated abilities triggers as well, so that can also be quite nice if we get it going. And then the mana base is just lots of blue-white dual lands for fixing, including the combo of the Archive, which also enables the Verge to make both colors, but we also have lots of colorless spells, so the mana's usually not an issue unless we need blue specifically on turn 1 to cast Enigma Jewel, which is why we have 12 of these untapped blue sources, and then double white for Day of Judgment, but that's also where the dual lands will help out. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We've got Jewel into Mazemind Tome, so sign me up. And then even double Synthesizer as a follow-up, but I would probably keep almost every hand that has 2 lands, Jewel and Tome. So we can already start drawing. And then there's no real reason to put an upkeep stop to scry, since we're just gonna end up drawing anyways. I guess that's not true. I could scry first, then play Tome, draw, so we get 1 card deeper towards a land in case we were to miss. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So for now we can draw. And then especially if we don't draw a land. And we want to scry here, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be necessary. We'll just take our draw step. And we could play around No More Lies and wait on deploying synthesizer until we can pay for it, or we can just jam it and make them have it. Possible they're not a dedicated control deck. And yeah, Prankster, so it looks like Oculus, which typically doesn't play many counterspells. Synthesizer resolves, we get to Scry, don't need another Jewel, but I'll take a land. And then Casket's a pretty good answer to Oculus and Haughty Djinn. Still get to draw with Tome. So, feels like we're in decent shape. Finding more Caskets and Braided Nets is going to be good for us. And a Kiora, alright. They could always mill more cards in their turns, so we have to be careful. Yeah, playing Synthesizer might be fine. If our opponent has both a bounce spell for my token to attack unopposed, plus a way to activate Kiora, then they can make an 8/8. Otherwise I can just block Kiora with my token and then Casket the 8/8 token. So there's not a huge difference between just exiling Kiora. Although I guess that's not true because they can recur Kiora out of the graveyard, whereas they can't if I exile it. But I kind of want to keep Glass Casket for Oculus, which is a more threatening creature that we can't effectively stop with a Braided Net. So I could also just play Braided Nets and give up on an extra token from Synthesizer. But I think we can just put the pedal to the metal here. And then... don't think I need Collector's Vaults. So we'll just pass. Founding. Gonna start from Chapter 1. So they're casting a spell for free. And it's a Prankster, so that's gonna enable Kiora. Opponent milled Oculus and found Recommission. So, yeah, this could be bad. And they have a bounce spell, so that's a scenario we wanted to avoid. I think I still keep Casket for Oculus. And then use Braided Net to tap down the 8/8. It is a legendary, so they can't have more than one in play with the same name. Although I guess they will be able to keep it on defense. So, step 1 might be to just draw with Tome. Might draw Sweeper as well. And then I'm looking at Foundry plus Braided Nets. Trigger our synthesizers a bunch. Could also take the hit from the Scion. Because yeah, they would have to choose between keeping one on defense or hitting us for 8. Opponent's gonna get back Oculus. So that's what we need to exile here, so they can make 2/2s each turn, which can otherwise keep up with our construct production. So yeah, if I tap down the 8/8s, they get to attack, but I guess I get to block, so that still seems fine. So our opponent's probably not attacking. Nope, they are. So now I can block Kiora. Should block with both in case they have a bounce spell here, so they don't get to save Kiora. And they actually did. Alright, so we can answer Oculus, which is step 1. Luckily for us, Get Lost doesn't answer artifacts. And then we're probably gonna draw with Tome once again. Find another Foundry. So we have 5 mana for artifacts. 2 on Caskets. So I could go Vault, activate, but then I have to sack the treasure, so I guess Foundry, Caskets, and another Tome makes the most sense. So if I attack, I do give the opponent a chance to double block. So I might want to tap the 8/8. Because I currently don't have a great way to enable Synthesizer again. And I'm okay taking 8 on the way back. Possible this is a valuable creature that our opponent wants to preserve. But yeah, opponent's gonna chump. Just a land. Alright, can probably afford to scry with 1 tome. And then nuts we can also transform, drawing us a ton of cards. But our opponent will get to recommission. Do they have another Oculus to get back? They do. Yeah, that's still a concern. Braided Net does not stop it from making 2/2s. So we need to be able to find some more 3-mana artifacts to keep triggering Synthesizer. Mightstone and Weakstone would be awesome here, since we can answer Oculus as well as trigger Synthesizer at the same time. Get Lost at least gives us 2 artifacts, so it's not all bad. And we'll take 8. Alright, Day of Judgment seems fine. So that can reset the board in the meantime. I'll draw with Tome. Can draw again. Find Urza, so now we're just a Mightstone and Weakstone away from transforming it. And Day of Judgment. I'll play Vaults. And pass. Opponents still milling themselves. Yeah, Hodijin could be a lot of damage. 9 power already. Opponent's got 1 in hand. So Braided Net can tap it down. So we'll keep digging. Could also look to craft our Locus of Enlightenment, actually. So we have quite a few options. It has all activated abilities, can only tap once each turn though, but I'll be able to trigger those abilities twice. So it is interesting. It's a 9 mana commitment. I think for now I'll still wait and just draw. Activate Vaults. Find another Vault. Okay, I guess we're playing Urza. Play Vaults. If I activate Vaults, I'm gonna be a little bit short of casting a 3-mana artifact afterwards. Could go exploring with the map, but they might remove Urza in response. So I think I just pass and then activate Vault end of turn. We have to be getting close to another 3-mana artifact. Opponent feels threatened by Urza, can't blame them. They do have to use their only white mana on it as well. Alright, and then Braided Net crafting and drawing cards is probably going to be quite strong here. Opponent's out of big plays, just deploying the Pranksters. Alright, so we want to craft. That actually triggers Synthesizer as well. And then we can draw. Maybe play Foundry first. That opponent's going to negate that one. Fair enough. And that's a lot of cards. Have to be careful that we don't end up decking. But yeah, we have enough to play Urza and a Might Stone, but I'll maybe save Urza for next turn, so we can immediately transform. And then for now, answer Haughty Djinn. Got glass caskets aplenty. And sure, we'll play another 3-mana artifact just to make sure. I think we've got this under control. I get to keep 7 cards, so Urza, Spider, Casket, Spider, Spider, and yeah, opponent's gonna scoop it up. Awesome, so didn't get to craft the Enigma Jewel, but crafting a Braided Net, as it turns out, still quite powerful. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a relatively slow hand, could benefit from Enigma Jewel, but I'll give it a shot. Well, speak of the devil. Now our Vault and Tome look a lot better. Still facing an aggressive red deck, and we're on the draw, so still gonna be a tricky matchup. Do I casket the Challenger? I think I do want to get the Mazemind Tome going, or do we prefer Collector's Vault? So Vault, the upside being we generate treasure tokens, which can maybe help us double spell sooner. And card advantage doesn't matter as much against aggro, since we're just going to die before we get to deploy all our cards. So actually, I think I go for Vault here. Even though the upside of Tome is that eventually gains 4 life. Keep Casket for maybe a Screaming Nemesis. It's going to be a Manifold. Alright, now I regret not just casketing the Challenger. Especially if they also have another pump spell here. We could take a lot of damage, but we do see Nemesis exiled. And a Burst Lightning to trigger Prowess, so that's essentially 4 more damage. Well, at least it wasn't a Monstrous Rage. Get to use the Vaults. Probably don't have time to deploy Fabrication Foundry. Although it does only cost 1 mana with Urza. Maybe a land can go then. Alright, so activate Vaults. Discard a tap land. We can play Urza, which plays a 1 mana Foundry, which in turn plays a 1 mana Casket. And then, if our opponent didn't have a pump spell, I'm not too scared of the Manifold Mouse. Challenger likely to deal more damage. And I'll deploy the Tome so we can just start scrying as soon as possible. So pretty much all our cards on the table here. On turn 3, which isn't bad. But yeah, opponent had a Screaming Nemesis, so they maybe had that option last turn but didn't go for it. Well, still gotta block the mouse if it attacks, so our opponent just gets in for 3. I'll take it. Otherwise, we won't be able to gain life for the rest of the game, which there's still hope here with the Mazemind Tome. Braided Net isn't bad. That can lock down the Screaming Nemesis. So we'll draw that. And then now, probably better off just drawing with Tome. Can still activate Vaults. Play the nets. Can also decide to craft with Artifact at some points, just so we can draw. But I prefer the net as an answer to the Nemesis. Now if our opponent has a burn spell in hand, they can just target their own Nemesis, and then I wouldn't be able to gain life anymore. I'm gonna use this now. Only stops activated abilities, but won't stop the damage redirection. And then I gotta block. but likely gonna see a pump spell here. Hopefully it's not a Monstrous Rage. A turn inside out. Alright, so Urza dies, but no harm, no foul. A Lightning Strike. Alright, so we're at 4. They didn't want to take out their own Nemesis, which is understandable. Alright, so now we need to find some blocker to put on the board. Could start by just drawing with Tome. Or we could play Synthesizer to scry first, and then if we find a 3-mana artifact, we're also good to go. Foundry doesn't quite do it. Alright, so I'm drawing with Tome, I think. Found a Mightstone and Weakstone. Can I still play it? I think I'm gonna be a little short here now that Urza's gone. So that's a problem, since we'll have the Manifold Mouse hitting us. Can still activate Collector's Vault. Can maybe find a Casket. Okay, so we're dead to any 2 damage, basically. So they didn't have a haste creature, but burn or pump spells will still get there. Alright, we got to untap, and now with Mazemind Tome we gain 4. So we're out of burn range. Mightstone a good answer to the Nemesis. And we might even be able to play Synthesizer first. Yeah, that looks good. So we might be doing it now. And we're going to be able to close out the game very quickly. Thran Spider and Casket seem fine. Spider triggers Synthesizer again. And then I'll gain my 4 life while I can. And then we still have Braided Net at the ready. Okay, so now the opponent's outs are severely diminished. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Couple of tomes to start scrying, and then Synthesizer into Thran Spider. Likely the plan. Facing red-black. Opponent keeps on top. So still not entirely sure what we're up against, but we can wait and see before we decide what to do with our scry. Could be a Reanimator deck. As we see Carnosaur go to the graveyard. So don't need more lands. And I'll scry again before drawing. Glass Casket doesn't seem necessary either. Alright, I'll just play a Synthesizer, get to scry again. And then Enigma Jewels, decent with all these Mazemind Tomes. Braided Net, a way to trigger Synthesizer and maybe stop a bigger creature from hitting us. So I think I'm happy with both. Start with Enigma Jewel, so I can play it alongside Spider next turn. And then we're off to the races. Now a Harvester of Misery in the graveyard and a Bitter Union to discard. And anything bigger that they try to reanimate here. They seem to have options. We could struggle to beat something like a Volgavoth. Opponent on Gishoth instead. Alright, so the Braided Net's gonna be key. Although, yeah, I guess they could already reanimate this next turn with haste. I could still scry Jewel to the bottom to draw into the Braided Net so we can stop a reanimated Gishoth. Yeah, I think we have to. So good thing we still have this upkeep stop on Tome. But yeah, it kind of feels bad now that we don't have the Enigma Jewel anymore. But can't really afford Gishoth to hit us this early in the game. At least now we can start building up more artifacts to block. Because now with Zombify in the format, There's a 4-mana sorcery to reanimate creatures. That's going to be another Bitter Union first. So possible they didn't have it, and we could have maybe waited a turn on deploying the net, but better safe than sorry. Now I wouldn't mind keeping another land on top, so we can play Spider plus another Tome. I'll take another Synthesizer as well. Opponent did end up discarding a Volgavoth after all, so yeah, that's going to be problematic, since I cannot easily target it with a Braided Net without having to sacrifice a bunch of permanents. Well, either way, play Thran Spider, trigger Synthesizer, Tome to grow our constructs some more. So we are getting in for a decent amount of damage. And we still have Tome for card draw. And our opponent can also use the Power Stone token to activate Bitter Union to give their creature haste. And yeah, it's going to be Volgavoth reanimated. So opponent can go for it, give it haste. We'll probably just take it. And then try to outrace them somehow. So we're just looking for more 3-mana artifacts. Enigma Jewel probably a little bit late to the party, even though we could try to craft it. That's not particularly helpful right now. So we can scry. Glass Casket also doesn't do much. Would be an extra permanent we can maybe sacrifice to ward, but don't think that's necessarily where we want to be right now. Alright, drew another Synthesizer, that helps. So we can start there. And then now another Enigma Jewel and Collector's Vault. I think we just bought them both. Play Tome, and I guess we're attacking for 22 for opponents on nothing. Right, they did have a Disfigure, so that will keep them alive, barely. Still have Braided Net to maybe stop another hasty creature from killing us. And in a pinch we can target Volgavoth. Our opponent's going for Gishoth. Can even block it with our 10-10. But I think I would rather just tap it down. And then take 9, we should be safe. And our opponent scoops it up, awesome! On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a promising hand. Can play Jewel to set up Vault and immediately activate it turn 2. And then we've got Casket against aggro, so we have time to activate Vault. Can discard additional copies of Jewel if we draw into them, since it is legendary. Alright, up against the red-black aggro with Heartfire Hero on 1. So definitely a good matchup for Glass Casket. Spider can maybe block a Slickshot Show-Off if they've got that one. For now a Challenger. Could also be convinced to play a Casket right now. And then next turn I can still play Vault activate and play another Casket. Just so we don't take too much damage in the meantime. And then, what are we hoping to draw? Maze Mind Tome can eventually gain 4, which could be important. But also good with the Enigma Jewel to just draw a card each turn. But yeah, Synthesizer eventually to close out the game. Our deck doesn't have instant speed removal, so pump spells are usually quite effective against us. And our opponent's gonna turn inside out already, so it's possible they have a sellsword in hand. Or they just wanted to enable Valiant. Yeah, this looks like a sellsword, so that's 10 more damage. So we're at 2. And our opponent gets to Manifest Dread, so it's not like our opponent casts many spells this game, but this combo is just brutal. So, what's my move? I could still go for Vault Activate Casket. I think I'm better off just playing a Thran Spider now. And once again forego the Enigma Jewels, 2 mana. Could just be dead to a burn spell. And Burst Lightning. Well, this game was uneventful. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand's pretty unexciting. A bunch of 2-drops that require more mana. This is better. We've got Jewel to enable Maze Mind Tome, although sadly can't play Jewel on turn 1 with our current mana. And I'll keep a Synthesizer. Probably still reasonable to play the Jewel now. Or I can play Tome to maybe hit our land drops with a Scry. Because yeah, Tome gets the discount from Urza, whereas Jewel does not. And if we play Jewel, we could play Tome, immediately draw. In case something bad happens to the Synthesizer, or we don't want to run it into a counterspell. Opponent does keep up mana, drew another Tome. So yeah, I'm not opposed to just playing a Tome over Urza. Urza's going to be better if we can immediately make use of the mana discount. And then we'll see if this resolves, can maybe draw main phase. If we draw another tap land. Although on the flip side, if our opponent has a Fairy Mastermind, it's better to draw in the opponent's turn. So we'll try that instead. Nothing from our opponents. So still not entirely sure what variety of blue-black they're playing. But yeah, we've got our card draw engine on the battlefield, so I'm happy. Another Jewel is not going to be needed since it's legendary. So now could be a good turn for Urza into Maze Mind Tome. And then wait on Synthesizer for another turn. Opponent instantly exiles Urza, that's okay. Still got our 1 mana discount out of it. And then this might be a long grindy game, so we might be able to just draw with all the tomes instead of needing to scry. But I'll put an upkeep stop just in case. And draw our land, so yeah, don't need to dig for land specifically. Alright, let's try Synthesizer. Could maybe play an untapped land first to pay for a Phantom Interference. Plus we can now also draw with both tomes. That resolved. Find another Synthesizer. So yeah, this game's going well. Unless our opponent's gonna combo us out of nowhere. Which is still a possibility, I guess. They are being quite patient. But yeah, blue-black's not known for having a ton of sweepers that answer artifacts, which would be the main concern. So we'll try this once again. Now they might have to fight over it, but no, that resolves. And look for additional 3 mana artifacts. Now I can afford to Surveil. And still activate both tomes. Caskets doesn't seem necessary. Could potentially keep a tome in play if we are planning to craft the Enigma Jewel. Sheoldred's Edict, a good answer to our token. That's fine, we'll get more. Yeah, I don't think I'm in a hurry to craft the Enigma Jewel. So if our opponent's hand is all removal, we can eventually outgrind them. Alright, robbery for 3, that makes sense. But we have so many synergistic cards that wouldn't be very effective on the opponent's side of the battlefield. Yeah, let's just draw. Haven't drawn too many relevant spells so far. Alright, Spider does help. That'll trigger Synthesizer a bunch. And then I can still draw with Tome. Maybe start there. And we've got a Sweeper as well, just in case. Yeah, it's 9 mana to craft the Enigma Jewel. Cascade only exiles creatures. Possible they found one with a robbery that we can exile. Now if our opponent has a bunch of Sweepers that also exile cards from my library, that could be bad. Yeah, speak of the devil, deadly cover-up. But at least we already have double Synthesizer in play. But now they could strip away Thran Spider, which reduces the number of ways we have of triggering Synthesizer in the first place. And that seems to be what they're going for. So Thran Spider's gone, opponent got a good look at our library. So yeah, if their deck is just all Sweepers, they could still get there. And the Collector's Vaults, as we draw another Enigma Jewel, so yeah, if I try to craft, we need 4 non-land permanents with activated abilities. Yeah, that wouldn't work since we only have Tome and the Power Stone at the moment. So I guess I'm just drawing with the Tome then, even though it will get exiled here. Yeah, finding our own Collector's Vault would help to get rid of some of these useless cards. Can still play Jewel just to replace it so we have more things we can craft with, but then the Locus of Enlightenment also wouldn't do much. So yeah, we're not really doing much at the moment, despite drawing so many extra cards. Is there anything in our deck that removes Synthesizer? Not that I can think of. Opponent's gonna robbery for 4. Yeah, that's getting out of hand, but we did find the vaults, so that helps. And now Mightstone and Weakstone can trigger Synthesizer. And we'll just draw 2. And I'll keep another one on top. Hope they don't steal it. And then next turn we could look into crafting the Locus of Enlightenment. They need to answer our creatures in the meantime. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but it feels like our opponent's still probably in the better position, even though they're far from actually winning the game. Finale for 4. Apparently got reprinted in Foundations. So they didn't cast it for enough to have a limited hand size, but doesn't seem to be a concern. Alright, so I guess our opponent was just desperately looking for removal, but couldn't find it, so the constructs might actually go the distance. As we see, Go for the Throat discarded, of course unable to destroy our artifact creatures, and they discarded another copy. So yeah, we just need to put 1 artifact in play, and that's game. So, kind of surprised we got there so easily in the end, but yeah, shows that it's pretty important to choose your spot removal carefully. Go for the Throat does have its limitations. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Got a mix of ramp, card draw, removal. Just need to hit some more line drops. Facing red-black, is it aggro? The rest, alright. Probably takes, I want to say, Collector's Vault. Either that or Foundry. And they're having a hard time deciding, so I guess that's promising. Ends up taking a Casket, so they are a creature deck after all. Alright, in that case, maybe start with Foundry, and then next turn I can both play Vault and activate it. Theater to Surveil, so it might be more of a mid-range or reanimator deck. Synthesizer was an excellent top deck, so we'll start there before they can duress it. And then double Maze Mind Tome. It is a card I enjoy, but we're probably looking for 3 mana artifacts now. A land would let me cast Mindstone and Weakstone, so I don't think Tome's quite what we want. Because yeah, land into Mindstone into Collector's Vault would be a good sequence. Preacher, we can maybe Casket. Braided Net, also a decent answer. So we'll start there. Trigger Synthesizer. And then we can lock down the Preacher. If our opponent has a card like Shieldred, Mindstone is also a clean answer to it. Did draw the land, but it enters tapped. Probably just Vault plus Casket this turn. Can maybe Surveil first. Another Synthesizer seems great. So, exile 1 Preacher. Hit you for 6. Opponent was glancing at their graveyard, so they might maybe have Delirium cards or ways to reanimate creatures, as we see Zombify go to the graveyard. So I'll let the Preacher attack here, I think. Maybe keep Braided Net to answer their follow-up. Since they're just making a token instead of drawing cards. Okay. Probably fine to Synthesizer before we Mindstone, so we get even more constructs out of it. Can also activate Vault just for a treasure token. And then Tome is a little bit more tempting now. Just to get more card draw. And then I imagine if we attack our opponent's jumping, which is okay by me. Yeah, we might just have to trade for Preacher if we don't want to keep tapping it down. Reason I don't want to necessarily use up all the Braided Net counters is that our opponent could reanimate something big. That's going to be more problematic. But yeah, now we can maybe tap down. If they play another creature, tap down again and attack for lethal. If they have nothing. They are once again looking at the graveyard. We did exile the Preacher with a Casket, so... Alright, fine, we'll tap it now. And then if I use Vault, it's just to make a treasure, basically. Discarding Tome. Might still be worth it. Alright, Cruelty of Gix. Luckily for us, cannot take my Mindstone and Weakstone. So they're probably searching, yep. But if they don't have a 1-mana removal spell for my constructs, they're just facing a lethal attack. So not sure what gets them out of this. And the opponent realizes that they're just dead on board. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand is functional. Not particularly fast out of the gates, but Synthesizer with follow-up 3-drops is kind of what we're hoping for. Facing blue-black. So Maze Mind Tome is pretty good in control matchups. And the opponents get the same idea. Can probably afford to scry with the first tome, since we're not going to lack card draw with the second tome coming up. Just to ensure that we hit our land drops and find the most impactful cards possible. But if we feel like the game's going to drag out, we can slow down on the scrying and turn it into card draw instead. So we might see them scry end of turn. Make sure to put my own stops. Opponent's being patient on their tome. So they could easily have a counterspell for my synthesizer if I try and go for it here. It is pretty important that we actually resolve it. Collector's Vault isn't bad. It's similar to Tome, except we can get rid of dead cards and generate a small mana advantage. I think we can still do better here. Well, another synthesizer certainly helps. So now I don't feel bad running this out and maybe getting it countered, but if it resolves, we can very quickly take over. Our opponent forced to use a hard counter at least. So we're just going to hope that they eventually run out. Control decks often need to be equipped with more spot removal and answers to creatures these days, as opposed to having room for a ton of counter spells. So I think we just jam another synthesizer here. If they had a Phantom Interference last turn, they would have cast it. So it has to be another hard counter, and synthesizer resolves. So now we're just looking for more 3-mana artifacts. Thran Spider giving the opponent a Power Stone is relevant with their own Maze Mind Tome, so it will help both players out. I think I'm going to slow down on scrying since we have a land for turn already, so that's not a bottleneck. Try a Thran Spider anyway. And then we can draw with the tome maybe. And our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, control decks can often struggle to deal with a resolved synthesizer, since it will eventually just make enough tokens to take over. Sweet. Alright, so we got to see our blue-white artifact deck in action, and yeah, it seems pretty well positioned to fight more controlling decks and mid-range strategies. Against aggro, we can sometimes be a little bit too slow to interact, so that's where having additional sweepers can be helpful. Maybe we'll get another cheap portable hull-like effect in a future expansion, which would certainly help against aggro while still keeping the artifact count in the deck very high. So those are the types of cards we're looking to fit into the deck, but I'm sure we'll get some useful artifacts out of the upcoming expansion, which is centered around vehicles, so there will be artifacts aplenty. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.